Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX with me, Devika Devan. Our top focus right now continues to be Prime Minister Modi. Tomorrow, Prime Minister Narendra Modi heads to Abu Dhabi in Dubai at a time when the West Asia crisis is beginning to directly affect both India's economy and Indians living in the Gulf. One of the biggest concerns right now is energy security, with tensions impacting global oil markets and fears growing over possible disruption in the Strait of Hormuz, through which a major share of the world's oil passes. India is now looking to secure stable crude supplies from the United Arab Emirates. Indian oil firms are reportedly facing losses of nearly 30,000 crore rupees every month because of the rising prices and supply chain uncertainty, making energy talks one of the biggest focus areas of the visit. The second concern, of course, is the safety and security of Indians in the region. More than 4.3 million Indians live in the UAE, including nearly 2 million in Dubai alone. In recent months, viewers, Indians in the wider Gulf region have also been affected by the fallout of the conflict, including incidents linked to missile debris and attacks on commercial vessels. With tensions still high, India is expected to discuss coordination, emergency support and safe passage mechanisms for Indians if the situation worsens further. But beyond the immediate crisis, the visit also reflects how important the UAE has become for India strategically and economically. From oil to trade to technology, infrastructure and connectivity, ties between New Delhi and Abu Dhabi have expanded rapidly over the last decade. And at a time when the region is facing uncertainty, the UAE is increasingly being seen by India as one of its most stable and trusted partners in West Asia. But what really are the big expectations from this visit? We take this conversation forward. I have with me on the broadcast Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee. Major Dhruv Katoch joins us as well. I have Pathikrit Payne with me and Shruti Das Gupta, foreign affairs expert, with us. Let me begin with Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, if I may. Ambassador Mukherjee, of course, ma'am, the Prime Minister's larger visit is to European nations as well, but he is deciding to make an important pit stop in the UAE, given that the region is still in a status of crisis, one would describe. Why is it so important for India to continue its talks and relations with the UAE, and for the Prime Minister to also send out that signal and message that, hang on, despite everything that's going on, we've not really given up on the relations or on your position in this region?
Thank you, Devika. I think the Prime Minister's stop at UAE demonstrates the continuing importance of the strategic partnership that India has with UAE at a time when UAE is facing strains in its relations, for example, with Saudi Arabia. UAE has left OPEC so that it does not have any controls on it, imposed by OPEC on how much oil it wants to produce. And there are mechanisms being worked out on how to get access to these oil supplies, avoiding the Straits of Hormuz for a while, or at some point forcing a deal on the Straits of Hormuz, which the Iranians will have to accept. The visit also comes at a very interesting time when the Russian foreign minister and the Iranian foreign minister are in Delhi for the BRICS foreign ministers meeting, and the Chinese foreign minister could not join that meeting because he was busy with Trump's meeting Xi Jinping. So all in all, these are important developments happening around us, and as you rightly pointed out, the war, if it continues beyond a point, will impact India's economy and Indians. It will impact the global economy. It will also bring about a possible recession in the United States and in the European Union, which would be a catastrophe, and it would certainly ensure that Trump would lose the midterms, which is why there is some hope now being cautiously stated behind the scenes that perhaps Trump's meeting with Xi Jinping and these various other meetings which are taking place, including in New Delhi, the BRICS meeting, they might help to move towards a compromise. In the meantime, we have told our diaspora in Dubai and in UAE not to panic, to stay put. They are working from home. The businesses as yet have not been dramatically affected. And as you rightly point out, it's one of the largest diaspora presences that we have throughout UAE and particularly in Dubai. And it would be catastrophic if all of them had to come home. We don't look at that possibility. We are trying to calm things down. And I think in that context, PM's presence in UAE, while the Iranian foreign minister is talking to us here, along with the Russian foreign minister, gives an indication that everybody from all sides is trying to resolve this issue. One thing is clear, Devika, we are not going to pay any money to the Iranians to get our oil tankers through. That is against the law of the sea convention. These are open waters and nobody has the right to stop or to attack tankers or to force us to pay what I would call ransom money. That the moment one does that, then you set up dangerous precedents in other parts of the world, including the Straits of Malacca.
All right, that's an important understanding and perspective there, viewers. Let me bring in Major Dhruv Katoch into the conversation as well. Major Dhruv Katoch, your big expectations from this visit, and what do you think particularly will be on the agenda? Of course, we're going to be talking about continued energy supplies. We're looking at more LNG as well from the region, but what beyond that? Major Katoch, can you hear us? All right, we'll try to fix that line with him, but let me bring in Pathikrit then on that note. Pathikrit, in your perspective, why exactly is this visit coming up now, and what is it that the Prime Minister and India wants to signal to the world?
Well, it's not exactly any kind of a signaling, but I think it's very important to understand there might not be any big ticket announcement either. It's primarily about continuity. You know, the world is right now in a flux. There is no method in this madness. Every country literally is on their own. And so you have to secure your future. For example, there are two things. On one hand, yesterday itself, the cabinet committee headed by the Prime Minister of India approved a 37,000 crore project for coal gasification. So that is also about extraction of coal-bed methane and gasification of coal. That is very important. In addition to the potential possibility of India, enhancing the production of ethanol. There are restrictions that India is putting on export of sugar because ethanol might eventually get replaced. It might be replacing LPG as a cooking, gas. And India is also looking about expanding the scope of blending more ethanol into oil to reduce our oil import bill. But at the same time, it will not happen in one day. So you at the same time will have to continue importing from Middle East in spite of all the volatilities. UAE, having come out of the closet of OPEC, is now much more free to decide what it wants to produce. And I think India might go for a much bigger bilateral contracts. Supply is a very big issue. And the visit is also about the fact, if you connect the visit with the statement made by Prime Minister Modi recently, it indicates that the conflict is far more over. What we witness right now is a thaw. The Americans and the Iranians have very, very strong positions in what they want. So none of them are willing to budge. In the middle of it, countries like UAE have actually been caught in a trap, in a catch-22 situation. The Americans have their bases in countries like United Arab Emirates. Any kind of attack by the Americans eventually leads to Iran being attacking the UAE and countries like UAE at the very beginning, because they are at the frontier of that entire conflict zone. So for India to stand by UAE is very important. I would not be surprised if also there are understanding about India discussing, if not right now, selling, discussing the potential possibility of having some of its own air defense systems deployed in United Arab Emirates, because UAE has been badly hit by the Iranians. If you look at the trajectory of the attacks being done by Iran, they are primarily targeting the critical energy infrastructures. So this conflict is not going to go away. This conflict will remain. This conflict might even get worse. India is not here to play godfather to anybody. India is here to ensure that its own continuity of business is there, and at the same time, it is standing with United Arab Emirates while having a working relationship with Iran. You know, it's such a situation today in the world. Let's be practical. Nobody is listening to anybody. So all you can do is to meander through that entire area and ensure that your own objectives are met, your own interests are protected. It is also very important that UAE, as it stands today, doesn't have too many countries to stand by. And if you look at the new realignment happening, wherein if we have to believe that the Prime Minister of Israel had visited United Arab Emirates and Prime Minister of India is now visiting, which means that UAE stands as a country which is very important both for Israel and India. If you look at I2U2 understanding, that alliance that we already had, UAE was also supposed to play a very critical role when it comes to the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor. So UAE is important for us culturally, economically, socio-politically in various aspects. And it's important to stand by. But to presume that just because Prime Minister is going there, they would see a massive change, it's not going to be there. You would see majority of what's being discussed not even coming out of the closet. It will not even be made public. But things are very volatile. All that is being attempted right now is to stabilize situations, at least to a certain extent, if not entirely. Against that backdrop, how Iran would react tomorrow when it comes to UAE, we do not know. Maybe tomorrow a loitering munition will fall in another energy infrastructure. In the middle of it, ensuring stability is extremely profound. UAE has a very big diaspora, Indian diaspora as a population. They have their own business interest, economic interest. UAE is now their own country. So for India's continuity, sustenance of UAE is very important. And UAE, mind you, we have to understand, it doesn't have strategic depth. It's a very small country. But every missile of Iran, the easiest target is UAE. And so today, UAE, even if it doesn't want to be part of the war, the Americans will be very angry if tomorrow UAE says that all the American bases must be taken off. So it's not easy to be a UAE right now. And against that backdrop, India is going there to say that, okay, let's calm down the situation. We are there with you. Whatever we can do, we will do. But these are the things you have to take care of us as well. For every 10th ship that is coming from that Strait of Hormuz, one might, get sunk. One recently got sunk. One of these cargo ships of India. So against that volatility, all we are trying to look into is continuity of business. A certain kind of semblance doesn't necessarily mean that everything will be hunky-dory from tomorrow. The clouds of the next round of war is very much there in the horizon, and that's why I think this visit is important. Not that this visit will change everything, but the continuity factor is the critical one.
Yes, and particularly when we speak of continuity, Shruti, let me bring you in on this. The UAE is India's biggest supplier of crude oil and natural gas. In fact, in January, India had signed a $3 billion deal to buy LNG from the Gulf nation. And the UAE has also recently, as Pathikrit was also pointing out, exited from OPEC, which is expected to now boost its output and help countries like India that are seeking help with long-term supplies of cooking gas and crude oil. Even though we are focusing more now or wanting to focus more now on renewable and becoming more and more Atmanirbhar, there is a realization that that's not going to happen overnight, and you do still have a large dependency on oil. In your perspective, what can be the biggest highlight as far as this visit is concerned? Is this simply about continuity, or are we looking at tapping into the UAE in a different manner now that it has finally exited the OPEC?
You're absolutely correct. Once the reins of OPEC have been taken off this horse of UAE, it is ready to run in the longer race with India. And because we've had a long history of having good relations with them, the I2U2 and the other economic partnerships that we have with them, we have multiple, as you said, MOUs with them, deals with them, and not just recent, going back decades. So UAE trusts India as a good economic partner, and that's why they're willing to be one of those very important keys into ensuring that for the days to come, India gets its fair share that it requires to function as a global economy, as a global manufacturing hub. The IMEC, of course, is important not just for India, because we don't really want it for India alone. It is good for the entire global economy. As Madam Ambassador just mentioned, that the global economy is staring at a recession in the times to come, because even if the war ends, let's say today, the damage that has been done is going to take years, if not more than just two, to recover. So what does that mean? That means that they need manufacturing hubs like India, Brazil, and their supply line continuity to ensure that it doesn't come to a full stop or a halt, which then triggers a global depression for everybody. That's not a situation we want. So it is important for India to play its role. It's important for UAE to collaborate with trusted partners, and that's exactly the place where India sits at. Now, apart from that, we are forgetting that UAE is part of a large amount of green initiatives with India also. Their own nuclear facility, I'm forgetting, Nuclear Power Corporation of India and Emirates Nuclear Corporation, they have a formal MOU where they function together, and they want to have a cross-border nuclear framework and all of that. So that shows that it is part of the nuclear story that India wants to develop as a power source for civil source of power. Beyond that, they're also a part of about 500 gigawatts of renewable capacity by 2030. That was part of the Emirati Green Initiative towards India. So they're not just part of the renewable source, that is the crude, that is 10% that we were buying from them, 40% of LPG. That is not just the only story. They are also part of our green energy. They're also part of our nuclear energy story. So there are various levels that we can interact with them. OPEC, coming out of OPEC is important because it helps UAE explore options without conditions put by other partner nations in the Gulf. But it is not the only reason why we would be going there. We have a strategic partnership. They might need more equipment, and they might be looking at India to provide it for protection and other reasons. So there is layers beyond layers. They also, I believe, they are also looking at dual currency trade from dirham to rupee. They do not want to have a dollar aspect to the deals between UAE and India. That will help bring down a lot of pressure on the rupee that is facing like about it's hitting its lowest point, I believe, now in the last 2 years. So having deals within the rupee and dirham rather than involving the dollar in it, the de-dollarization factor of it is also very important for India. So the visit, I believe this is a 5-day, beginning of the 5-day tour. It's a stopover, the first one. It's important for the immediate future where India addresses its current energy needs, and also what India can expect from UAE in the days and years to come, how UAE will be able to, honor the deals and MOUs that they have made, because they have suffered a large amount of infrastructure losses themselves. They might be facing a paucity of resources themselves right now. So it's a dual system. We will try and help each other out. Maybe India will be part of re-establishing UAE's lost infrastructure, and UAE will be helpful in ensuring through its Habsha and Fujairah pipeline to ensure that India's oil tap is not turned off completely as the stalemate between USA and Iran continues.
All right, Major Dhruv Katoch, bringing you in on the matter as well, sir. Major Katoch, in 2015, Sir, Prime Minister Modi became the first Indian Premier to visit the UAE in 34 years. So there was some understanding in the administration as well that here's a country where it's important for us to really re-establish those ties. And we've seen now over the course of many years, his upcoming visit is in fact going to be his 8th. So of course there is a lot of emphasis on India-UAE ties. The countries also, sir, are planning to double down their bilateral trade to $200 billion in 6 years. And a key focus of that is also forming a defense partnership. This is where I want to bring in your perspective and analysis. Given the current situation, sir, of the Middle East and the way we've seen the fragility of the entire region and the fact that areas and spaces that were considered very secure may not be in the future. That's been proven by the current war. How does India then fit into a larger perspective of the UAE as a defense partner, and why are we a key partner for that country as well?
Thank you. Firstly, why are we as a key partner? I think let me address that first. It has taken a lot of effort to establish this relationship. And, India's move to establish great relations with West Asia, especially with the UAE, it is not something which has just started. It started, as you very rightly mentioned, some time back. But I think the Prime Minister has personally invested in that. And today, the India-UAE partnership has become very, very strong. And even when we look at things like the IMEC, which is potentially which potentially can come along, we have the I2U2 agreement, with the 4 partner countries, and then UAE is a very important part of that. Now, on the defense side, we have seen the way the Iran and the US war has led to the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, and within the UAE, a large number of targets have also been bombed by the Iranians. Now, I think what India can do when we're looking at the defense partnership is ensure maritime security in the Arabian Sea and in the Gulf. There could be a lot of cooperation in that, especially as far as the movement of oil and energy resources is concerned. Number 2 in this will be intelligence sharing between the 2 countries. We can also cooperate in defense in counter-terror cooperation. And the another aspect which I think will be very important will be defense technology and joint production. Production of shipping lanes, energy infrastructure I've already spoken about. And this has become very important because now the UAE actually sees India as a very strong security partner rather than just an economic partner. So I think this is going to be mutually beneficial. We require long-term energy stability, which the UAE can provide, and the UAE requires that sort of defense security which India can provide, both in terms of expertise, both in terms of equipment, and also in terms of joint production of any of the items which we require. There's one more point, though it is not directly related to defense. Is when we are talking of India's strategic petroleum reserves, we already have 3 strategic petroleum reserves, and I think if we can, through this cooperation, build a 4th or a 5th, perhaps in Odisha or perhaps somewhere else. Now, the finances can come from the UAE, their reserves can be kept here, and it will be mutually beneficial to both, because the volatility in any of the geopolitical concerns which comes about, as we have currently seen, it mitigates that to a very large extent. So I think it's a very positive sign. In my view, it has really been driven by the Prime Minister, which makes it very important. And our diplomats have taken it forward in a very, very positive manner, which makes it one of the highlights of India's relationship with the Arab world. Back to you.
All right. On that note, viewers, we have some news coming in as well. But before we move on to that, one last word with Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee. Ambassador Mukherjee, your perspective on the same. Yes, I understand that we do have a dependence on oil, and there is a lot of work that India and UAE can do together as far as renewables is also concerned. But when we talk about the current security crisis in the region, how do you think India can fit into that conversation?
Well, we have actually been urging on both sides to calm the situation down, because it's affecting, as I said earlier, the entire global economy. As far as our own requirements are concerned, quite apart from the very important points made by General Katoj, we have also diversified to a very large extent, and we now are getting oil and energy from a whole number of countries that we had not done business with earlier until this crisis occurred. At the same time, to cool down what is happening in that area, there are 2 imperatives. First of all, President Trump has to cool down. That's difficult because he's a very volatile personality. He has to cool down. He has to understand that his threat of exterminating a 5,000-year civilization overnight, which naturally, and thank God, did not happen, has just led United States into a situation where it is deadlocked in a situation which is not good for United States and its economy, quite apart from the global economy. On the other hand, the Iranians have to accept a pragmatic solution. They cannot keep pushing their extreme solutions to the Americans, which will never be accepted. Unfortunately, the Americans have exterminated the moderate leadership in Iran, leaving the Iran Revolutionary Guard, who were always very, very extreme, in charge. That is what happens when you utilize external assassination and violation of international law in this manner. Now we have to be in a situation where both sides have to back off, back down, and find a solution by which both sides, but in particular Trump, has to save his face. That's going to be the main challenge, because only when we can find a face saver for him, and that's not the field marshal who's going to do it. A face saver will have to be found for him by countries like India, like China, like Russia. We are the countries that can find a face saver. And if we do that, and as Shruti said, it is going to take time for the situation to come back to normal, even if everything is hunky-dory from tomorrow morning. That after all, there has been a fragile ceasefire. The point is that the Straits of Hormuz have to get back to normal. The seafarers who are stuck there, including Indian seafarers, they have to be allowed to come home, and there has to be some reassurance given by the insurance companies to these tankers so that they can continue the business, and there cannot be any ransom money paid to Iran. That's the bottom line. Nobody is going to pay ransom money to Iran, because that sets a very, very bad example when international waters are used for financial and territorial advantage, because Iran says they're going to use that money to rebuild. That
Yes.
is not acceptable to India, and will not be acceptable to most countries in the world, because that means to use Straits of Hormuz, whatever price we are paying for the oil, in addition we have to pay ransom money to get the tanker through, which means the oil will come at very inflated prices. How does that help us at all? It doesn't help. So it's something which needs to be calmed down as soon as possible, Jessica.
Right, absolutely. On that note, I thank all of our guests for joining us with that perspective. More on this tour tomorrow onwards, when the Prime Minister is actually